Ice, what are you most grateful for this year?
My daughter. Just the fact that I'm a dad.
Are you grateful for anything else that's not related to you? Big ish.
Yeah, it's my family. That's it.
Yeah, we the best in the world.
Last year has been really good professionally. Like, I'm really grateful. Sounds corny, but I'm really grateful to be here.
That's what I just said. We
I mean, it sounds so corny. I thought stupid me. One of them would say it.
Joe Budden calls out Ish and Ice for slacking. That's right, the Newark couch seems to be in dire straits. Ever since the arrival of Mona and Marc, it's almost like Ish and Ice feel like they can sit back and coast and let the rest of the cast do their thing. But it appears like Joe Budden is having issues with that approach. Now, in a recent episode of the podcast, the whole cast was pontificating about what they were grateful for. I mean, Ish was talking about his family, Ice was talking about his family, but Joe Budden wanted a little bit more. And it seemed like he wanted them to talk about their job. That's right. I think Joe wanted Ish and Ice to discuss how they're grateful to be on the best podcast in the world, one where they're valued and paid really great, even despite their lack of experience in the field. I'm not saying that's what I think, but it clearly seems to be what Joe thinks. But there was even more interesting moments to this show, and it revealed where Ish and Ice kind of view themselves. For example, Ish wasn't even prepared to speak on the Eddie Murphy documentary. Now, the Eddie Murphy documentary is revered as being very solid and a great watch for anybody who enjoyed it. But Ish was on the show and he ain't even watch it. Instead, he decided to add to the conversation by acting like he watched it, and he pretended like he watched it by saying, "That's black excellence."
You ain't see it, right?
I ain't see it.
They show a clip.
But I've seen a bunch of the clips.
Richard Pryor, he legit left me like just impressed by that
So
shit.
to me, that's black excellence.
Now, this was so egregious that even Marc pointed out that Ish didn't watch the documentary.
Doing an interview, and the interviewer says,
and laughed at his fronting abilities. Like, Ish is really great for partaking in a conversation where he's uninformed, and he even does so in a way that makes it seem like he wants to shine. Like, during that whole podcast discussion about the bigger picture going out of business, Ish was talking, and you could tell he ain't watched one damn episode of the bigger picture. And I think that ruffles the feathers of the cast, even so much. Like, I was watching Parks and Imani interview, and I saw Parks talk about like how people try to speak about music with him on the show, even though they don't know anything. I'm 100% sure that was in reference to Ish, who always acts like a know-it-all on every single subject. I mean, I can't help but laugh at the "That's Black Excellent" because it was like, yeah, I have to partake in this conversation and I have nothing to add, but I'm going to say something that is so irrefutable that you just have to accept it and move on. And it was just funny to me. But Marc also took another shot at Ice and Ish when he redirected a question meant for them to Joe. Joe said, "Why are you asking me?" And Marc essentially said, "You are more likely to do your job and answer the question."
me too.
I want to know what y'all most grateful for this year.
See it another day.
Oh, come on, give me a real answer. Joe, what you most grateful for?
Well, I prayed. Why do I have to go first?
I'll go
I
first.
actually told God.
Because you actually answer questions on the live podcast.
I'll go
yeah.
first.
That part. That's
I
right.
I am grateful for my new home.
Whoa, buddy, that was very telling that Marc Lamont Hill is poking fun at Ish and Ice. So, yeah, Marc had a good point. I asked Ish and Ice a question. They don't even really answer it. So now I got to give it to Joe Budden, and the two of us have to go back and forth and make a damn podcast. Now, Marc was shooting this whole episode, and you could tell that he was kind of fed up with the way Ish and Ice were potting. He, at one point, asked Ish, "Yo, do you watch anything on YouTube ever?" And he was just getting more and more sarcastic. He was fed up with the way they were approaching the show. Like I said, Marc gets real petty. And when he doesn't feel like someone's doing their role, he points it out. And I even think he might be, I mean, it's pretty short because these dudes be drinking, and I think Mark be drinking while he's on set. And as the night goes on and the days get dark in the background of the podcast studio, you see Mark start to get a little tipsy, more animated, and just make things uncomfortable. But it's still really entertaining, so I don't think he should stop. But it's just something I noticed, and I feel like a drunk mind speaks a sober soul. Now, Ish and Ice's journey on the show is filled with creative differences. When they first got there, Joe Budden was very much just getting them acclimated. Like, he would let them show their flaws. He would let them go on tangents. He would let them talk about whatever they wanted to for long periods of time. But eventually, Joe Budden started to constrict their ways of content creation, and that created major tension on the show. One of the greatest ways it did was when Joe Budden would tell Ice, yo, don't nobody care about you talking about your daughter. And if you do talk about your daughter, please make it interesting in a way that the listener wants to hear about it. And then with Ish was always talking about very serious topics. And Joe Budden would go to him behind the scenes and say, like, all right, so you're going to talk about these serious subjects. Are you considering the people who listen to this show as a form of escape instead of just battening down the audience with all these discussion points that they don't want to hear all the time? It was essentially Joe Budden saying, like, you guys have no balance. The way you speak is consistently trying to be like the old pod. And that was why the pod was typified as the Uncle Pod, because they weren't really young, youthful, and it wasn't just their age, it was their approach to content creation. Now, that is why Joe Budden would pivot towards getting Flip and reset the deck. So Flip would come on, even though he wasn't that much younger, but he still was young enough to introduce certain topics with a certain sense of energy, and he wouldn't be that serious. Like Ish and Ice, man, they used to be really tough to listen to because they would just, I remember at the time when I had the Patreon, I would cancel my Patreon. I would like, all right, so Ish and Ice are going to talk about serious stuff. They're going to not even really give it up. So I would cancel my Patreon for 2 months, get it, then retroactively watch things, and it was working. But then when Flip got there and Melissa got there, I was like, all right, I just have to keep my Patreon because with these two, you never know what might happen. But only time will tell if, these guys change. I would think they would never change because Ish and Ice just represent the old status of the show, one that relied on friendship over career connections. So by that, I mean, Joe Budden gets Marc and Mona. They're not his friends, but they're people in the industry who know how to entertain. Same with Melissa Ford and Flip. But Ish and Ice allow Joe Budden to sell friendship to the audience. And friendship is a big part of why the Joe Budden podcast has been able to distinguish itself. Now, it's unclear if Joe Budden and Ish are still really friends, but it's very clear that they used to be friends and share a bond for how they grew together as people and developed their own identities. And Ice, like Joe Budden said, is just a good person that he likes to have around. Also, Ice is someone that shows up on time and is open to feedback. Though I do believe that Ice is still, he still has the training wheels on him. Everybody on the cast knows that Ice gets treated differently because Joe Budden is protecting him at all times, and they really can't go in on him. And you see it with Marc. Like, Marc will joke with everybody but Ice. So only time will tell if that evolves. But let me know what you think. I do feel like the theory that Ish and Ice have lost their voice as Marc and Mona have joined is very prevalent. And I think that Mona and Marc are trying to antagonize that dynamic, make fun of them a little bit. Mona continuously wants to engage with Ice about like social issues and see what Ice thinks. Like, she just is trying to get at him a little bit. And same with Marc. But then again, Marc also doesn't want to look like the intellectual interloper that's always, poking fun at people's ability to think. So he has to be careful too before people are like, yo, why you being tricky with words? Why you backbiting? Why you trying to undermine Ish and Ice's value? Because I think Marc is very sensitive to how he's perceived by the community. And remember, he's there to try to speak to an audience he never was able to speak to on CNN, VH1, the Grio, and the Black News Network. He's trying to speak to a different audience. So if that audience comes away thinking that he is some snaky, weird dude that uses his academic abilities to undermine the true, authentic versions of experience in America, like Ish and Ice, then it will be all for no reason that he joined the show. So he's kind of like a politician. He has to watch how people see him. And I think he's trying to curate the way he acts. But I think in this episode, we saw a side of him that he couldn't hide. But it was entertaining. And I think we should continue to see how this develops. But with that being said, let me know what you think in the comments. Do you feel like Joe Budden is tripping for expecting Ish and Ice to show any level of gratitude? I mean, those are the guys that saved his podcast when Rory and Maul left. So shouldn't Joe be the one to show gratitude? And doesn't Joe undermine their value every time a new cast member joins? Remember when Flip joined? I mean, this guy was talking like Flip was the best thing since Pizza Bites. And didn't make it. And he did the same with Marc. So, hey, yo, this is the culture you created. We don't have to show you gratitude because you never really show us any gratitude. All right, y'all. This is Danny from The Stop. Peace.